So basically, this is the plot of Mozart's opera La Nozze di Figaro. The opera is set at the estate of the Count and Countess Almaviva near Seville, Spain, and the action of the opera happens throughout the course of a single day. Act 1. The opera opens with Figaro and Susanna as they see their new room that they will share as husband and wife once they marry later that day. Figaro measures out a space for their bed and Susanna tries on her wedding hat. Figaro tells Susanna how good it will be that they live in a room that connects directly to the rooms of the Count and the Countess, but he changes his mind when Susanna points out that the Count has been making advances towards her. The Countess calls for Susanna, leaving Figaro alone on stage. Figaro says that if the Count wants to dance with him, then Figaro will make him dance to his tune, claiming that he can outwit the Count in anything. Figaro leaves and Marcellina and Dr. Bartolo enter. Marcellina, a woman old enough to be Figaro's mother, has brought Dr. Bartolo as legal counsel to help her force Figaro into marrying her. Figaro defaulted on a loan from Marcellina, and the agreement was that he would marry her if that happened. Dr. Bartolo is happy to help because Figaro's assistance in the marriage of the Count and the Countess prevented him from marrying the Countess himself. Dr. Bartolo leaves Marcellina alone, only for Susanna to enter and spot her. Marcellina recognizes her, and they enter a battle of wits and sarcastically delivered compliments. Susanna achieves victory by politely calling Marcellina an old hag, and Marcellina storms off in a huff. In comes Cherubino, a young boy who falls in love with almost every woman he meets. He gives Susanna a song he's written for the Countess and explains to her that he's been fired because he got caught in the middle of a romantic tete-a-tete with the gardener's daughter, Barrettara, and asks Susanna to intercede with the Countess on his behalf. Suddenly, Susanna and Cherubino can hear the Count approaching. Cherubino hides behind a chair, not wanting to be seen alone with Susanna. The Count tries to seduce Susanna and offers her money to sleep with him. His attempt at seduction is stopped by the approach of Don Basilio. The Count also does not want to be seen alone with Susanna, so he goes and hides behind the chair. Cherubino leaps out at the last minute and now hides by sitting in the chair with his cape concealing him. Don Basilio starts to complain about Cherubino to Susanna, including his obvious infatuation with the Countess. The Count hears this and leaps out of hiding to continue his complaints against Cherubino. He starts telling the story about how he found Cherubino with Barrettara under a table. As he begins to pantomime the situation with the cape thrown over Susanna's chair, much to his surprise, he once again finds a cowering Cherubino. The Count is ready to administer a punishment to Cherubino, but a group of townspeople enter led by Figaro. Figaro tries to get the Count to proclaim before all of his people that Susanna will go to her marriage bed with her modesty intact. The Count manages to appease Figaro, although we get the sense that he has no intention of honoring his vow. Then, in an effort to get Cherubino out of the castle and away from Susanna, since Cherubino was the only witness to the Count's advances towards Susanna, he publicly declares that Cherubino is now appointed as a soldier and must leave to join the regiment in Seville immediately. Figaro finishes the first act by singing an aria to Cherubino, joking about the lack of women and romance he'll find in his new life as a soldier. Act 2. The second act opens in the room of the Countess, and we are introduced to her through her first aria, Porgi Amor, where she sings about her lack of a true devoted love. She then has Susanna explain the Count's monetary seduction plan. Figaro enters, and he explains that he has sent an anonymous letter to the Count describing a false rendezvous that the Countess would be having that evening. He claims that this will keep the Count too busy to mess with the wedding, and in order to help Cherubino, they all scheme to disguise Cherubino by dressing him as a girl and use him, dressed as a her, as bait for the Count in order to expose his lecherous actions. Cherubino enters ready to help the Countess in any way he can, and Susanna pulls him into singing the song he wrote for the Countess. After his performance, Susanna and the Countess lock the door and begin transforming Cherubino. Susanna leaves to go get a dress for Cherubino to wear, and suddenly the Count returns and quickly becomes furious because the door is locked. Cherubino is quickly locked in the Countess's closet, and the Count is let in. The Count becomes suspicious when he hears a noise coming from Rosina's closet. She claims that it is Susanna trying on her wedding dress. The Count and Countess take turns issuing commands to Susanna, really Cherubino, with the Count commanding her to speak or come out, and the Countess commanding her to stay silent and stay hidden. The real Susanna enters unseen by either of them and hides herself from view until they both leave to get tools to open the closet, locking the door to the rest of the castle as they depart. Susanna frees Cherubino from the closet, and Cherubino launches himself out a second-story window in order to escape from the Count. Susanna hides in the closet as the Count and Countess return. The Countess confesses that Cherubino was in the closet, not knowing that Susanna managed to take his place while they were gone. The Count is furious, but he goes to break into the closet and Susanna opens the door. Both the Count and the Countess are shocked, and the Count apologizes to his lady, seeing how hurtful his lack of trust is. Figaro comes back, trying to start the wedding festivities, when Antonio the gardener enters, complaining of a broken pot under the Countess's window. Figaro claims that he jumped out of the window, afraid of the Count finding him with Susanna, and that he broke the pot when he landed, and he feigns a sprained foot. Figaro narrowly succeeds in convincing the Count of the elaborate story when he identifies the paper that was left behind, Cherubino's military appointment. But just as all of this resolves, Marcellina enters with Bartolo and Basilio with charges against Figaro, intending to force him into a union with Marcellina, ending Act 2 in a state of chaos. Act 3. Susanna, at the request of the Countess, tells the Count that she will meet him that night in the garden. Once the Count is convinced, Figaro enters and she tells him as they leave that everything is set for them to pay off Marcellina. The Count realizes that he's being tricked and begins to concoct his own revenge plot. Barrettara enters, telling Cherubino that he can hide in her house and that she will disguise him as a girl to hide him from the Count. The Countess, alone, sings again, lamenting her unloved state and thinking about her lost happiness. The scene changes to Figaro's hearing, and the judge decides that Figaro must marry Marcellina. Figaro demands that because he is nobility, he would need the permission from his parents for a marriage. Under doubtful glares, Figaro explains that he was kidnapped as an infant, and after Figaro shows his birthmark to Marcellina and Dr. Bartolo, they realize that Figaro is actually their illegitimate son. Good thing they realized that before Marcellina forced her own son to marry her. Yeesh. They reconcile as a family, and Marcellina and Dr. Bartolo decide they might as well get married too. Susanna enters, and when she sees Figaro happy with Marcellina, she thinks that he prefers Marcellina over her and throws a fit and slaps her fiancé in the face. Marcellina explains everything to Susanna, and the two couples rejoice. Antonio reveals to the Count that Cherubino never went to Seville and that he has instead hidden at his estate dressed as a woman. The Count leaves, intent on catching and punishing the pesky Cherubino. The Countess instructs Susanna to write a note to the Count inviting him to a rendezvous in the garden and to secure it with a pin that he is instructed to return to her. A group of peasants arrive with the disguised Cherubino among them to serenade the Countess. The Count arrives with Antonio and they discover the disguised Cherubino. To save him from trouble, Barberina loudly reminds the Count that he once promised her anything her heart desired, and I think we all know what that means. The Count is mortified and allows Barberina to claim Cherubino as her future husband. The third act ends with a double wedding, Susanna to Figaro and Marcellina to Bartolo. Figaro watches the Count prick his finger on a pin securing Susanna's note, laughing, not knowing who the author is. Act 4. Act 4 opens with Barberina heartbroken that she's lost the pin that the Count instructed her to return to Susanna. Figaro enters with Marcellina, and after learning that Susanna wrote the note, Figaro immediately thinks the worst. He ignores the advice from his mother that this may not be what it seems, and swears that he will catch his wife with the Count in the garden that night. Susanna and the Countess enter in each other's gowns. Marcellina is with them and she warns them of Figaro's suspicions. Cherubino enters looking for Barberina and sees the Countess in Susanna's gown, and, thinking it's Susanna, starts flirting with her. The Count enters, and in an effort to shoo everyone else away from his tryst, he starts throwing his fists around in the dark. The punch lands on Figaro, but Cherubino leaves anyway. The Count begins seducing Susanna and gives her a jeweled ring. She leads him off into the woods, managing to avoid the Count seeing her face. Susanna enters and Figaro sees her, initially thinking that she is the Countess. He starts explaining what is happening with the Count and Susanna. Quickly, Figaro recognizes Susanna's voice and puts the pieces together. He attempts to join the ruse by declaring his mad love for her. Susanna, not realizing that Figaro has figured it out, becomes enraged and slaps him several times until Figaro manages to calm her down and explain himself. The Count returns frustrated by his inability to find Susanna. Figaro gets the Count's attention by dramatically declaring his love for the Countess. The Count calls out to anyone who can hear him. Figaro and the Countess keep apologizing to the Count, but he will hear nothing of it. Susanna enters and reveals herself as the Countess. The Count sees the ring on his wife's hand and realizes that he has been caught being unfaithful. He begs for her forgiveness, and the Countess, proving herself to be the more merciful and loving of the two, forgives him. The opera finishes with everyone rejoicing their own happiness.